Hi, my name is Abigail Morris, and I'm here to discuss the design process of Handmade Horizons. While my initial focus was on creating a broadly marketable game, it was only when I allowed myself to weave my personal experiences, insecurities, and creative struggles into the world that the project found its voice, which honestly I think changed it for the better. And I think specifically what helped with that was the introduction that I created and also the landmarks. I'm going to kind of go through just a brief summary of those things, especially since some of the landmarks don't have a lot of context. For the introduction, what I wanted to focus on was really connecting the story to the game and adding a purpose for players to engage with the world. And so, with that, I realized that I could kind of create an introduction that would kind of convey the premise of the entire thing. I originally didn't plan to make this, but after presenting it, I realized that it really did need a bit more to bridge the gap between the two and to add more meaning. So, with that, I leaned into my plan for the game's voiceovers to be mostly improvised. I recorded a natural conversation between me and my brother, captured through my computer while we were on Discord, on a call with a few of his friends. I think having that audience made the conversation livelier and a bit more authentic, since my brother leans into more of his natural sarcastic side when he's around his friends. With that, as well as just kind of a basic summary of what I just needed this conversation to entail, we were able to capture a solid take after just 3 attempts. And then I spent about 2 hours editing the audio, cleaning it up, removing background, and pretty much put the scene together. And I think in all, it took me about a day and a half to figure out how to make a level sequence, how to navigate the camera, and add and build assets to kind of create this office space in order to create this cinematic that helps kind of guide the story. I think that it helps a lot kind of create that gap for a couple of different reasons. Adding that kind of natural conversation brings an element of vulnerability and a real aspect to it that I don't think I could have done through script. Also, there was a few foreshadowing elements in the introduction that helps players kind of connect the dots. For example, the cohort cup, the books. Those are both assets that I used in the actual game world, and they also are a significant part to the game's story itself. And something that I kind of slid in there, which I was really excited for, was the original kind of thumbnail sketches of what the first book was supposed to be, which is almost verbatim to the way that this cutscene plays out. So you're almost kind of getting an idea of what's going to happen to the player before the cutscene really ends, which I think is really nice nod to the original story. So the second part that I want to talk about are the landmarks. And the landmarks are usually just kind of areas of interest in the game where some of the honeypots are hidden. When trying to create some sort of connection or some sort of deeper meaning, I realized that I had to pull a lot of aspects of myself into this game. And the actually four specific landmarks that I'm going to just highlight here are the cohort mug, the knife fountain, the cardboard jumping puzzle, and the swamp, which is basically kind of a hidden Easter egg for players who tend to lean into exploration. For one of the most notable landmarks is going to be this giant mug located on the right side of the map. The mug features an illustration of 8 members of my graduating class from MadTech Master's program. And while it may seem like a simple, playful nod to the people I worked alongside during the creation of this game, the mug holds a deeper meaning that's a lot more personal and represents a bittersweet part of my experience in the program. Now, throughout my time in the program, I struggled with feeling like I deserved to be there. And although I valued the knowledge and experience that I gained, I often felt small and out of place with my cohort. Many of my classmates had particular skills that aligned well with the program, while I found myself being more of a generalist. And I didn't really feel like I belonged in any particular medium or focus. And despite trying to carry myself with confidence, internally I often felt drained, isolated, especially during my first year of the program. And it wasn't until I began working on the project, receiving encouragement from professors, and forming close friendships with a few of the people in my cohort that I finally started to feel a sense of belonging. So creating this mug in the game became a way of honoring that journey, acknowledging both the struggle and the growth that led me to feel that I was truly qualified to be here. The second landmark that I'm going to mention is the knife. And this is one of the more subtle landmarks in the game, located right next to the cohort mug. While this area was originally designed for an aesthetic appeal, it ultimately became a way to reflect an important aspect of my creative process, which is my ability to repurpose assets without sacrificing quality. As someone who tends to work quickly and push myself to complete projects under tight deadlines, I developed the skill of reusing and adapting assets from current or past projects to save time and energy. The knife fountain was designed to showcase this approach. For its structure, I used the hilt of the knife model I originally created for an animation project the previous spring, and I reimagined it as the base of this fountain in the world. When players collect the pot of honey at the top of the fountain and step onto the platform, the fountain rises in the air, revealing the full length of the blade hidden beneath the ground. This mechanic not only highlights my tendency to creatively reuse resources, but it's also a fun reward for players, giving them a new perspective on areas that they've explored and areas that are still to be unlocked. And hopefully, if I'm able to work on this after graduation, I hope to have the other parts of the map so you can actually see how vast this world is. Now, for the third one, I'm going to talk about the cardboard jumping puzzle, because this one does not have a lot of context. However, I feel like it reflects a vital lesson I continually have to remind myself during creative projects, which is honestly to trust the process. As someone who values careful planning, structured timelines, and a clear creative vision, I often find the uncertainty and unpredictability that's usually inherent when creating something new to be deeply unsettling. When pieces of a project don't immediately fit together, I experience an overwhelming sense of dread, and I instinctively try to force a solution before allowing things to just naturally unfold. Ironically, this urgency often creates more stress. However, when I give myself permission to slow down, step back, and engage with the work thoughtfully, I can see how each piece connects over time. And so to create this sort of tension between impatience and discovery, I designed a jumping puzzle so that its solution is not immediately obvious. Players must take the time to explore and observe closely to uncover the path forward, reinforcing the importance of patience and attentiveness. I incorporated this lesson into the puzzle by designing two key aspects: the floating platforms, which the player will kind of encounter once they step onto the edge of the cardboard pile. And the second part is the hidden cubby, which I also designed hidden within the cardboard pile that players can access from multiple angles. And inside is another honeypot, rewarding the players who take the time to thoroughly explore. Now, during playtesting, I observed a natural split between player behavior. Players who attempted to speedrun or move quickly through the game often missed these two honeypots on their first visit. Fortunately, they were able to discover them later after revisiting the area. In contrast, players who identified as completionists often found both honeypots early in their playthrough. This observation was rewarding because it showed that the design successfully encouraged a natural engagement with the game's core theme. By slowing down, paying attention, and trusting the process, players mirrored the creative patience I strive to practice within my own work. The final landmark that I want to really focus on is the swamp. I knew that I wanted to create an Easter egg for players who enjoyed this aspect of exploration, and I decided to design a hidden exhibit that showcased unused assets. A lot of the assets that I had in mind, they were going to be ones that I just didn't use. When I first came up with this concept, I had 3 assets in mind. The first one was a tree animation that was not aesthetically pleasing, nor did it really fit the world. The second one was a bear NPC, non-playing character, named Butterbean, which I was planning to have follow the playing character, like explores. And when I created this, I was told by many of my players that Butterbean felt kind of creepy and eerie, and so I just put it on the back burner as something I would kind of work on later. And for Momo, I was able to create his mesh, and it looks really good, but I just didn't have time towards the end to add him into the game, which I was really kind of bummed about. So I knew I had these 3 things in mind. However, when it came to gathering the unused assets, I realized that all of these assets that I assumed weren't going to work actually did. And assets that I thought that I wasn't going to use, I ended up repurposing in other ways. For example, I used a lot of the scrap tree as foliage and bushes for the world. In assembling this exhibit, I realized something far more powerful than I anticipated. The failure that I've been preparing to showcase ended up just being a small, hidden section that I had subconsciously dedicated a large portion of the world's real estate to. This realization made me confront a deeper truth, that I often expect myself to fail more than I allow myself to see where I succeed. The swamp stands as a quiet reminder that failure, while present, doesn't define the entirety of what I create. By trusting my instincts as an artist and embracing imperfection, I not only created a more emotional, resonant game, but also reconnected with the joy of the creative process itself. And at sometimes what feels like failure can still contribute into something meaningful later on. And so through this project, I came to understand that the core elements of meaningful design lies within vulnerability and authenticity.